All right, let's talk about a really strange moment in recent American history. Imagine this. The U.S. government is in the middle of a massive shutdown, and yet, the House of Representatives, one of the most powerful chambers in the world, is practically a ghost town. How does that even happen? And more importantly, what did it mean for everybody else?
So here's the big question, right? Why on earth was the House out of session for nearly 2 whole months during a national crisis? This wasn't just some long holiday break. As we're about to see, this was a very deliberate and very controversial strategy with some huge consequences.
Okay, so to really get what happened, you have to look at the timeline. It all kicks off on September 19th. The House passes a bill to fund the government. And then, they immediately go into what's called a recess. Basically, they go home. The huge problem is that the government's budget runs out on September 30th. With no new deal approved, the government officially shuts down. And for 43 days, the House stayed empty until members were finally called back on November 12th to end what had just become the longest shutdown in U.S. history.
So what was the big fight all about? Well, it really boiled down to one thing. The House Republicans' position was simple. Hey, we passed a funding bill. We did our job. It's on the Senate now. But Senate Democrats hit the brakes. They said there was no way they'd pass a bill unless it protected healthcare subsidies that helped millions of Americans afford their insurance. That was the line in the sand, and the entire government came to a screeching halt right there.
And you can hear that argument loud and clear right from the Speaker of the House at the time, Mike Johnson. His defense was straightforward. The House voted on a funding bill. In his view, that's their constitutional duty done and dusted. The ball was officially in the Senate's court to solve the shutdown. So let's be really clear here. The empty chamber was not an accident. It was a high-stakes political gamble. The strategy was to use the House's absence as a weapon to create so much pressure that the Senate would have no choice but to cave and pass the House's bill without the healthcare stuff Democrats were demanding.
As you can probably guess, this move, basically taking an entire branch of government off the board during a crisis, did not go over well with everyone. The political backlash was immediate and intense. And it wasn't just coming from the opposition party. It was coming from inside the Speaker's own Republican Party, too.
Democrats were, to put it lightly, absolutely furious. This quote from Representative Jim McGovern really captures that feeling. He accused the majority of quiet quitting their jobs, of just disappearing when they were supposed to be governing.
But what's really fascinating is that the frustration wasn't just coming from across the aisle. Even some Republicans, like Representative Kevin Kiley, were saying this strategy was a bad idea. His point was simple. You can't negotiate a solution, you can't compromise, if you're not even in the room where it happens.
And, the shutdown wasn't the only thing that got frozen. All the normal day-to-day work of Congress just stopped. A newly elected representative from Arizona couldn't even be sworn in. A big vote on releasing some very sensitive files was totally stalled. All the committee work, which is really the engine room of Congress, just came to a grinding halt.
Now, while all of this political fighting was happening in the news, this wasn't just some abstract concept. The shutdown had a very real, very direct, and for a lot of people, a very painful impact on hundreds of thousands of Americans who were just caught in the middle.
And this table here makes that impact painfully clear. Federal employees and military personnel, they faced incredible uncertainty, but at least they were legally guaranteed to get their back pay once this was all over. But look at that last row, contract workers. These are the janitors, the security guards, the IT specialists who work for private companies. They were just sent home, their jobs suspended, with absolutely no guarantee they would ever see a single penny of those lost wages.
And the consequences didn't stop there. They rippled out and affected all of us. With FAA staff, including air traffic controllers, working without pay, you had staffing shortages that led to thousands of flight delays and cancellations. It just threw the whole travel system into chaos.
This detail is really telling. To deal with the massive drop in morale for essential workers like TSA agents who had to show up to their jobs every single day without a paycheck, the government ended up giving out bonuses of up to $10,000. It was a clear sign of just how extreme the pressure on them had become.
So, after 43 long days of political standoff, financial hardship, and public disruption, how did this finally end? What was the breakthrough that finally got the government back up and running?
Well, in the end, it wasn't some grand compromise between the leaders. It was a crack in the dam. A small group of moderate Democratic senators basically said, "We can't do this anymore." They broke ranks, cut a deal with Senate Republicans to reopen the government, and in exchange, they got a promise of a future vote on those healthcare credits, effectively kicking that can down the road.
And with that deal done in the Senate, the Speaker finally called the House back into session. For the first time in almost 2 months, members came back to Washington. They held the vote, They passed the Senate's bill, and just like that, the longest government shutdown in U.S. history was over.
And that leaves us with this final and honestly pretty unsettling question. The shutdown is over, but a precedent was set. What does it mean for our democracy when shutting down an entire branch of government becomes just another tool in the political toolkit? That's something for all of us to really think about. Thanks for joining us.